Hey, what up, comrades? So it's time to talk about Magic Knight Rayearth. So this video is going to be broken up into a couple videos, mostly because I tried to put Charlotte onto YouTube and it got very upset. So this anime portion is only going to be a bit shorter than normal. But then we'll do the full video game review. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the 2 seasons of the anime, not the OVAs. I haven't watched those. I'm not going to really talk about the manga. We're going to talk a little bit about it, just in comparison, especially because Season 2 of Magic Knight Rayearth is kind of a train wreck. We're going to talk about the games, starting with the Sega Saturn game, the Super Nintendo game, then the kind of side stories, probably the Game Boy games first, then the Game Gear games, because essentially all the Game Gear, all the handheld games are like deviations of the main story or like side stories, or one of them's like a Princess Maker style game, which was actually pretty good, even though most of it was in Japanese and it completely crashed at certain points on the emulator / ROM I was using. So what is Magic Knight Rayearth? Magic Knight Rayearth is a fairy tale that was devised by a group called Clamp. Clamp's a group of women, I think it's all women, in Japan who call themselves Clamp, and they work on a bunch of different stuff. Magic Knight Rayearth is probably their most popular thing that I'm tracking on. Probably other stuff I'm just not aware of, but the fun thing about the whole situation is that they get to work as gals. They're gal pals. An interesting note, I watch a lot of not the Comicsgate thing, but like your boy Zach talks about this a lot, like how he had this whole video lately. It's like women, there's no reason to hire women in the comic book industry because they just cause problems, which is mostly true these days. But it goes back to you had this whole group of women creating comics, because this Magic Knight Rayearth was originally a manga in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, that were extremely popular, extremely successful, and phenomenons, worldwide phenomenons. And then you have these women, quote unquote, in the modern era who can't take a established brand like the X-Men, and they can't do anything with it. They just completely fall face forward, flat on their faces. And when they do something, it's I'm the first woman to do this, or women have never been represented in comic books, or some bull crap like that. And it's no. Trash has not been represented in comic books at this scale for a long time. Anyway, that's a little side rant. Rooney. Magic Knight Rayearth is a fairy tale, like I said. It is Hikaru, Umi, and Fu, which are fire, wind, or fire, water, and wind, essentially. And this is something that comes up in the anime and the games one time, but it also is very important when it comes into terms of their magical abilities. Hikaru is her magic's based on fire. Her mech is fire. Umi's water. Fu's wind, right? And so they also have the visual themes, the wind is green, Umi's blue, Hikaru's red. And Hikaru's kind of there's the 3 characters, and they share screen time and they share stuff. But Hikaru's kind of the main character, especially in the manga, is my understanding, more so than the anime, first season anime, but then especially in the second season, where Umi and Fu could essentially not be in it, and you would kind of not lose out on too much, which just goes to the prior comments about the second season's kind of a train wreck. And the interesting thing is the second season and the second series of the anime were being written at the same time, so you kind of have a Game of Thrones situation, but in the 1990s, because this all came out 95, 96, 97, if I remember correctly. I know the games came out in 95, so maybe the anime originally came out in 94, or maybe the games were all made at the same time as that. I think the games were 95, manga was 93, 94. I could look this up, but I'm not going to. They all came out in the early 90s. So what happens is the ladies are they're 12 to 14, depending on the translation I saw. But they're in middle school, because that's middle school era. So the original translation might have just been middle school. And then when it came to English, they just translated it to fill up the, when you dub something, you got to have the mouse make the same, try to match all that crap. But the girls are visiting Tokyo Tower from 3 different schools, and then they get summoned by Master Mage Clef, who is the best magician in all of Sephiro. He summons them there. No, he doesn't summon them there. Sorry. He meets them there after they get summoned by Princess Emerald, or Princess Emerald, again, depending on the translation, who has been, quote-unquote, captured by the priest Zagato, who was the high priest of all Sephiro. But then he became evil all of a sudden and captured Emerald, and he's got a crew of individuals who work for him. And it's very much kind of like a Monster of the Week sort of situation, only Monster of like the short series. So you have like a good comparison that came out around the same time as this is like Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is really like a Monster of the Week, but then you have Beryl, who's like the main bad guy. This is set up in a somewhat similar way. We have Zagato, but then instead of having like a Monster of the Week, you have these like sub people who they get involved in various stages. So the first one we meet is Alcyone, and she's a boobacious magic user who was a disciple or an acolyte, not an acolyte, or disciple, what is the word I'm looking for? An apprentice of Master Mage Clef, who then is in love with Zagato, and so followed after him. So she's the first one we fight. And then the Magic Knights are able to defeat her because Hikaru discovers magic before they're there too. But their big goal is that first they have to go meet Pressia. Pressia is this magic blacksmith lady who can create these swords that will evolve, and armor that will evolve with them. But first they have to go get... They have to go get an Ethereum or something. They have to go get some sort of like magic stone. And in the process of doing that, they bump into Alcyone again. And then we later get Ascot, who becomes... So it starts with Alcyone, and then Ascot, who's like a little guy, who ends up having a crush on Umi, who summons monsters. They end up fighting a bunch of these monsters. They get their swords. One of Ascot's monsters kills Pressia, which is like sad times, had by all. But after they make the weapons, and then Caldina, who is kind of like a big sister to Ascot, and she has like a funny Southern accent in the dub, even though like you find out in season 2 that she's from like a different planet, and that planet is very like Middle Eastern themed. So why she has like a very like borderline offensive Southern accent, like American Southern accent. I don't know. But they stick to it. They stick to it hard because we meet some more characters from her planet. I think it's Chisetta, maybe? Baron. I think they're from Chisetta. I think that's what it's called. And you're just like, why is this happening? So after they get their weapons, the next step is now they have to unlock their gears. Or what do they call them? They call them the gods. They call them rune gods. In some translations I've seen, they call it, they just call them machines. And these are mechs. So as they go around and they're unlocking mechs and they're battling, Caldina and Ascot. And then later on they have to battle a hypnotized, what's his name? Anyway, he used to be the head guard. Oh, that's what his name is, Lafarga. Lafarga, the head guard for Princess Emerald. He was hypnotized with Zagato, but now they kind of beat him a little bit, and then he like comes to and he's like, I will help you in the future. So eventually they get all their machines up and running, and they evolve their armor and their weapons, and they are all like, we're doing great. Time to go rescue Princess Emerald. And so they head off, and they fight like a mech. They fight Zagato, who summons his own mechs, and they like, I can't remember, they combine forces, like, what's that, Zoltron? Yeah, like Zoltron. At some point, they combine their 3 mechs to like a Transformers Ultron kind of thing. I can't remember if it's in the Zagato fight. I think it is, actually. And then they're like, all right, we killed Zagato. Time to rescue Princess Emerald. And they go in there, and then we find out, dun, 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 that Emerald got the Magic Knight. She summoned the Magic Knights to come down to kill her because so there's this whole pillar system. She becomes much more relevant in the second season. Relevant is, and they talk about it a lot more. But there's a pillar system, and essentially the pillar, who is Princess Emerald, she grants the wishes of the people of Sephiroth. Like, essentially, they live in perfect peace and harmony, and everything's great. But because she was captured, the whole planet was like dissolving and coming apart. But then you find out that the reason she summoned the Magic Knight Rayearth, the Magic Knights. Rayearth is just the name of one of the mechs. I don't know why it's called Magic Knight Rayearth, just because they have a longer name, and because Hikaru is the main character. But the Magic Knights from Tokyo to kill her because no one in Sephiroth can harm her, because she had fallen in love with Zagato, and if she fell in love with Zagato, she was going to put him first, and she wasn't able to do the whole thing with the wishes, and so she asked Zagato to like kidnap her so that then she told Zagato she was going to summon the Magic Knights, and he hit her because they were in love with each other. And so when she finds out that Zagato's dead, she turns, and she goes from being like a preteen girl into like this super babe model chick, and then she summons like her own machine, and then they have to fight that. And that's when they like form up, and they're able to destroy that. When they destroy that, they kill Princess Emerald, and she's like, thank you so much. And then the Magic Knights all return back to Tokyo, and they're crying. And that's in the first season. So earlier on, I mentioned that this is a it's a fairy tale, right? And there's a lot of these going on, and this is like, it was like a very, at this point, even in the 90s, they had so many of these kind of fairy tale stories, the reverse fairy tales, if you will, because it's the women rescuing the men or the women rescuing other women. They started to have these kind of, what would you call them? Going against cliche stories. So like, you look at like a fairy tale, like a Disney fairy tale, right? Because that's, when we're talking about fairy tales here, that's what we're talking about. And you have a princess, and the prince rescues the princess, and they live happily ever after. So this is a change of that, where you have the prince is now these three girls, young girls, who are going to rescue a princess, but then the princess ends up being the true bad guy, and so they kill her instead, right? And you saw this with like Revolutionary Girl Utena, which came out later than this, obviously. You saw about this with Sailor Moon as well. And then there's other ones where it's like the main character is like the prince, and then she rescues the princess, or the prince, or whatever. So it's very traditional. Everything up to that point makes you think, oh, this is just a cute fairy tale. These girls are here. They have armor. They have swords. They're fighting monsters. They're using magic. There's like a world to save. There's people to save. They're like universally good, doing good things. And it adds like nice nuances and stuff. Anyway, Alcyone seems like at some point she is dead. Like Zagato kills her. Find out that's not true. And then Caldina and Ascot both like decide that like, hey, we actually like the Magic Knights. Zagato's kind of a douchebag, so we're gonna peace out. So that's into season 1. Magic Knight Rayearth season 2. So Magic Knight Rayearth season 2 is pretty long, y'all. Like the first season I think was like 20 episodes. It's 20 episodes. And then the second season is it's like 35. It is so long, y'all. 49, I think. Yeah, 49. So it's almost 30 episodes. And nothing really happens in the second season. So the girls are all sad because they miss Saphira, and it's been a week or a year. I wasn't quite sure. But they get summoned back, or we find out they summon themselves back to Saphira, and all that's left is like the main castle with like some of the crew. Like it looks like Pressia's back, and Clef's back, and then Ascot's like, it looks like Ascot's grown up like 10 years. But we find out it's only been a couple years, and then we find out Caldina is dating Lafarga, and then we find out that since there's no pillar, the whole world is like collapsing, and that representatives from 3 different planets, Autozon, Faerun, and Chizeta, are coming to become the pillar, because they each have like some weird issue going on with their home planet. And we also meet Lantis, who's Zagato's younger brother, who is now the love interest of Hikaru. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Fu has a love interest. It's this guy Firion. We find out he's the little brother of Emerade. This is like in the first season. And him and Fu have a bunch of like flirtatious stuff going on, but it's very like middle school level flirtatious. I didn't read the manga, but I was looking at some interviews and stuff. And there's like the plot line essentially does not follow the manga at all, or it kind of does. Like the same concept. But they just kind of like slapdash things together. Like the anime adds these 2 characters, Nova and Lady Debonair, who are really boring and terrible to deal with, and were very shocking to me because I've never seen the second season until now. I'd watched the first season like when I was in high school or something. They don't seem like they fit, and they're just kind of annoying bad guys. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, we're still doing this. And then I read to find out that it's like essentially kind of the same. Some similar plot points were just like covered by other characters that were much more interesting and much more integral. Because Hikaru is in love with Lantis, but she also has a crush on this guy Eagle, who's the head of like the Autozon contingent, who also wants to be a pillar. And at some point, they both like get accepted to be the pillar, but then they have to decide who's actually going to be the pillar and save Saphiro. There's a lot of like guilt about the whole thing, and it's very much like meh. And then Hikaru has like this dark self, like the wish of her heart to be bad or something gets turned by Lady Debonair into this character Nova, who is super annoying. And so Hikaru has to overcome her own darkness and like rescue her. I don't know. A lot of this anime is just like killing time. In the second season. So the first season, we got whole episodes that were dedicated to Hikaru, Fu, and Umi, essentially. And it usually was based on them getting their machine, or leveling up their magic, or leveling up their sword. And so you just get a lot of that kind of like turn and burn. Here, it's really just like, there's a Fu like goes and interacts with the Faerun, which is like very Chinese oriented. There's this little girl who like draws things, and she summons like magical beasts and stuff to fight for her. And Fu and her become friends, and they use bows and arrows because one of Fu's things is like her bow and arrow. And then they eventually become best friends forever. And then there's the ladies at Chizetta, and they have like a little thing with Umi where they summon these like genies, and Umi like really doesn't like the genies for whatever reason. And there's a whole subplot with like Ascot liking Umi and her being like, no, I'm in love with Clef instead. So there's like that love triangle, but then Clef doesn't return her feelings. And then we found out that Pressia is not really revived like we thought. It's actually her little sister, and Clef knows it's not Pressia, but no one else does. And then she's also in love with Clef, but that also doesn't go anywhere. It's really boring. There's not much to say. Anyway, so then the girls are able to overcome, get the other planets like team, and then Hikaru is with Autozon, obviously. And he has like a mech, but he has a mech powered with like science, not just like goodwill and wishes, like the rune gods. But it was pretty boring to watch. Like it was a lot. Like 30 episodes is a lot of just kind of like, there's a lot of like dragon feet, like really slow progression of story, not much happening. Hikaru seeming like she's a totally different character than the first season, just like overwracked with guilt, dealing with Nova, dealing with all this other stuff. Alcyone she's back and doesn't really do anything. There's a whole like side story with like monster summoning because it just Saphira continues to not have a pillar and all that. And then it culminates. I'm trying to remember. Should look this up. I think Hikaru like kind of becomes the pillar, but at the same time she like takes on the pillar. She like gets rid of the pillar system so that Saphira can just exist. And the people, a part of the thing with the pillar system is that people live forever essentially with the pillar system, but that's not going to be a thing anymore. And then she confesses her love to Lantis over Eagle, and Eagle's kind of sad about it, but whatever. And they're able to defeat Lady Debonair using their mechs. And then they go back to Tokyo again. But this time they felt better because they left Saphira in a good place. And that is it. The end. So the anime's a mixed bag. The first season is pretty good. Like I'd watch it with my daughter when she's a little older. It's like fun. The girls are very empowering. They have like struggles and they were able to overcome. They're cute characters. They got cute little arcs. They got this cute little rabbit thing. Like it's a very nice like fairy tale. And then the ending is kind of like a little shocking because it's out of nowhere. You're just like, oh, then whatevs. The second, I don't know if I'd watch the second season again. It was so long and so boring. Like if she really wanted to, we'd do it. But that's my recommendation. If any of this sounds interesting, just watch the first season. The games, to be honest, are much better. And they also have different, like, I feel like every game was a totally different storyline. But again, the Sega Saturn game and the Super Nintendo game follow the first season of the anime, quote, like the basic gist of it, like the main plot points. But a lot of the inside stuff, the order in which they do things, interactions with certain characters, like new characters that just come out of nowhere, or probably from the manga that I never read. They come from that. While and the Super Nintendo version seems much more keyed in on the anime. And then the other games are like complete side stories that, some are pretty good. It's not all of them. I generally enjoyed everything. I feel like, if I remember correctly, the Super Nintendo version was kind of the hardest slog to get through, but the rest of them were pretty enjoyable. But we'll get to that later. Hey, comrades. So I was going to do one of these like super long form videos where I go through the whole game and kind of like walk you through everything that's going on and talk about how it made me feel and whatnot. And then several months have passed by and I just never have the time, energy or availability or talent to do that. So you've already watched a couple hours of I think it's a couple hours, at least an hour of me talking about the anime. We're going to go right into the games. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this in my normal way of doing this. I'm just going to record videos off the cuff, usually while I'm driving in my car, because that is the only time I have to do this stuff. And then I'll just splash some video clips of me playing through the game, and that'll be that. So here we go. So the first one, Magic Knight Rayearth game that we're going to talk about is the Sega Saturn game. It's the first game I played. The rest of these games I had to play on emulators very recently for the first time. But I bought this game for the Sega Saturn when I had a Sega Saturn back in high school. I really enjoyed it then, and I really enjoyed it now. It's kind of a Zelda-like game, if you're trying to get the gist of it. But you can, like, jump, and you can switch between the three characters, and the characters each have their own life and their magic, and their magic's different. And all in all, it's very fun. I'm not a big Legend of Zelda guy, but I do enjoy, and I do plan on playing through the first 3 games, maybe 4. Which would be The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, the Super Nintendo one, The Link to the Past, I think is what it's called, and then the Dream one, which is for the Game Boy. Because, I don't know, I tried playing Ocarina of Time or whatever, and Zelda in 3D just did not do it for me at all. I had a 64, sorta. I never liked it. I never really played much on it. It just never, like, struck me as being that good. So, whatever. But this Saturn game, I mean, for being a Saturn game, which Saturn is, the technical specs on this thing were pretty good. Not as good as the Dreamcast, but they were still pretty good. Like, we're talking, this is like PlayStation 1 era system with like PlayStation 2 level, like, quality, if you will. So the game is beautiful, as you can see. You can move around, it's very smooth. I played this on a Saturn emulator with a game with a PlayStation controller, and it worked great. No issues. The game loaded in. So how does it match up with the anime? So one thing to note, and I mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure, but the anime is not really based on the manga. It's kind of like, it takes its own liberties. Like, I can't remember his name at this point. Denovu? The white-haired guy who turns into a monster, that's a made-up thing for the anime. But it's also a made-up thing for the game, which is interesting. H1 East. That is where I want. Okay. So, but the game was made around the same time the anime was being made. So that's all interesting. And then the manga, it doesn't have this character at all. The other thing to note is that this game only covers the first season, or it's that thing. It doesn't cover it covers the same ground as the first season of the anime, which I've never read the manga, so I don't know exactly how they break it up in there. But it's totally different than the manga. It's more so, but it's based on the manga. It's not based on the show. So watching the show and then playing this game when I was younger, I was like, this is like a totally different experience, because it is not similar at all. Like, the characters don't have the same personalities generally. The gist of Emeraude summoning the Magic Knights to come and kill her because she fell in love with Sagato, and him trying to protect her from herself, essentially. And then, what's her fucking name? Ali, not Alisei, that's from Final Fantasy 14. The hot witch lady, she's still in love with Sagato. And then the other, like the boy and the dancing lady are somewhat similar. But then, like, the captain of the guards, Lafrega, if I remember correctly, he's totally different personality. And you meet him in a totally different place, and he's just like, when you meet him in the video game, he's just fucking around. And he teaches you how to break through stuff. The game also has a bunch of characters and a bunch of locations that are never visited in the show, and I don't think in the manga either. Because again, it's like, while the manga was being written, they started making the game, and they like knew how it was going to end. But aside from that, it seems like they were just kind of like going off the cuff, which I appreciate. The game's also got this funny mini game where you find like colored stones, and if you collect so many colored stones, you can turn them into like the Rainbow Merchant, and you can get stuff. The first thing you can unlock is like they call it a sexy picture of Precia, and it's just her like giving like a thumbs up or something. And then if you take it back, he's like when you buy it from the guy, he's like, make sure you don't show Precia that. Excuse me. But when you show it to her, she's like, give me that. And when you look at it, it's just like nothing. And it's like, she's so embarrassed. And I'm like, this is such a weird game. Anyway, so you start off in the Tokyo Tower, with just Hikaru. And you can move around, the girls can all, like, you can search a lot of stuff, and depending on which girl you have, it's like the forefront, she'll have different comments on everything. So there's a lot of stuff you can just kind of meander about until like someone's home and look at their bookcase and get different commentary. I didn't really do it too much, because why would you? But all the towns have a bunch of people you can talk to too. So the game kind of starts the way the anime, and I'm assuming the manga starts, and then ends the same way, but everything in between is where you get to kind of wild stuff. Besides the basic concepts, right? You go and they get the machina, and they unlock them, and they slowly evolve after they get the escudo, which is the special metal that evolves as they become stronger, and all that jazz. So yeah, you start with just Hikaru. She's doing the school trip in Tokyo Tower. You go upstairs, you see what you think is your dog, and you chase it around, and then I think Fu joins you, and then you bump into Umi, or vice versa, and then you get like this game also, because it was a Saturn game, has a lot of like anime clips that were made for this game. They're the same style as the anime, but from my understanding, they're not taken from the anime. They're like brand new. So I don't know if it's the same studio that made them, or they just like cribbed off each other, or however that works. But because again, the anime came out like 95, and so did this game. So like these games were like co-produced. And the manga was still coming out in 95, and then several of these other games that I'm going to talk about, they also came out in 95. There's a lot of like media that seem to have come out in like 95, 96. So they hit it and they hit it hard. But it was very popular because it was like a girls mecha isekai romance. Like it hit a lot of fucking genres with this stuff, especially the second season or the second series of the manga. Got really much more into like the love aspect of it. Well, this one, at least the anime, it's there, but it's mostly with like Fu and Dude Meister with the green hair. Shoot, what's his name? I'm gonna look this all up so as I talk more about this, because again, I'm gonna record this in piecemeal, so I will get more knowledgeable as I remember that I forgot things. Because I'm a professional. Anyway, so you guys get transported. The ladies all get transported to Saphiro. They meet with Clef, and you know, it's like, oh hey, this is kind of the lowdown. This is what's happening. I summoned you. Well, I didn't summon. You got summoned. Oh, no. He might have summoned. No. He's like, oh, you got summoned here. You're gonna have magic powers. You're gonna find the machina. He like kills a monster that like pops up. He's like, behold, I am very powerful. Watch me kill this giant monster that shows up on the screen. And you're like, wow, that is very impressive. Then he gets like accousted, and so he puts you on a griffin and sends you away. And then, God, it's on the tip of my tongue. It starts with an A. Alcyone? I think it's Alcyone. So Alcyone shows up, and she's like, ooh, and she chases after the crew, and then Hikaru unlocks her fire magic to defeat her. And then they end up right outside Presia's place. You go in, Presia captures them in like a cage. They meet Makoto as well. And Makoto doesn't really have that big of a role in this, in all reality. He just kind of like hangs out as like a sidekick character. They don't even build their cute little like home that they do in like the show. Do they build it in the show? Yeah, they have it in the show and some of the other games as well. So it is what it is. And the Presia is like, oh, I need a Scudo, but for now you can take these weapons. And so then then Fu gets her bow, and I'm like, oh sweet, that's right, you get a bow in this. Which she had for a minute in the anime as well, but just like the anime, you have the bow, but then once the Scudo weapon comes in, the bow is fucking gone. No, just kidding. You have the bow. Wait, now I forgot. But I think you have the bow the whole game, because I remember using it extensively later on. Yeah, I think you do get the bow. Okay. So then the weapons go. Hikaru gets like a slashing weapon. Umi gets like a stabbing weapon, which is pretty decent because it's got longer distance, but you got to be more accurate with it. And then Fu gets a bow, and the bow is like homing, if I remember correctly. Like you can just kind of hold it down to charge it. Oh, and they all have charge attacks, right? Like Link, only instead of like Link where it's like full life, you hold the button down and you charge, and then they do like a bigger attack. So with Fu, if you charge her bow attack, it like does homing missiles essentially. And so she's the best character in the game to play. I play a lot of Umi because I like Umi. And Hikaru is, besides like some times when like using fire magic was good. And generally against bosses, I would cycle through. I would like fight with Hikaru, use her magic until she had no more magic, then go to Umi, then go to Fu, and usually finish the battle with Fu, and vice versa. There weren't too many bosses that gave me a hard time in this game. There was like a fire boss that beat the shit out of me a few times before I finally like figured it out. And then there was like another boss. Alcyone, like, she's like, aha, at some point. There's, you're fighting with 3, I'm going to fight with 3. And then so she's got like a little crew and they switch around and you got to like switch your guys around to like do their weakness. Nothing's that difficult. Like there's not an easy mode or a hard mode in this. You just play it. But essentially, as long as you just don't blow your magic load, or, you have like, I think you can carry 1 potion and 1 magic potion, maybe some more. I can't remember exactly. But you can recharge mana and life, and it recharges for everybody. And then Fu's got healing magic, so you just kind of like have her heal. And then there's always a save spot right before the boss. And if you lose, it doesn't even like require you to like reload the save. It's just like, you just go back there. And if you want to give it another go, more power to you. So the game's very forgiving in that regard. There are some puzzles in the dungeons, but nothing too crazy. Nothing even as intense as like an Illusion of Gaia, or even like it's like early Link game level of like puzzle solving, where it's like, oh, you gotta go here, or you gotta push this thing around a little bit, and then that's good enough. You're good to go. So generally, the game again is fun. It's pretty user friendly. It's just like lighthearted. The story's good. The animations are good. It moves pretty smoothly. And you slowly gain more powers and more types of magic, and it's just like fun all around. So how does the story go? Right. So if you've been watching this up to this point, I've already explained to you how the anime goes. It's not too different. But we'll go through it. So Prestia sends you to the forest where you can't use magic. There you meet green-haired guy who Fu's in love with, and he joins you, sorta. In this game, some of the other games, he joins you as in he becomes like a playable character or whatnot. But in this one, he joins you like metaphysically, or like emotionally you are together. But he does not actually contribute to anything. So you get to the forest, you beat the boss, and then you get to the Scudo. And then you got to fight the bosses to get the Scudo, right? The bosses that are like, Hikaru's got to fight her dog, and Umi's got to fight her parents, and Fu's got to fight herself. The interesting thing with Fu's fight is like, oh, okay, so every time I hit her, I hurt myself, so maybe I should just not fight. But she'll fight you, and what it is just like, you just got to heal through it. So you got to like do damage, heal yourself, deal damage, heal yourself. None of these battles are too bad. And then you get the Scudo, and you go back, and Prestia gives you like the new armor and the new weapons, and everyone's happy. And then Prestia's like, cool, see ya. And I'm like, well, that's different. Because the animation clearly, this is very emotionally dies. And everyone's very distraught. And this is just like, adios, amigos. It's like, cool, see ya. And then the brother guy, Emeraldo's brother, he like pieces out. And he shows up again a couple of times later on. Yeah. And Fu and him have like more interaction. But that's it for now. So you go to okay, so then after that, you go to like the first town. Yeah, I want to say, I think that the first town's after you get the Scudo, if I remember correctly. So the first town you meet the mayor. Each town has like a couple main characters. So in this one, it's the mayor who's like, oh, we're so happy to have like this wizard who's protecting the village and helping us out. But then you find out the guy's kind of like a scam artist, that he like accidentally cast like a spell, or accidentally did something that like kind of protected the village, but not really. But then at the same time, they can't get into like the mine. So the village, like the economy's not doing super great or something. So then you got to like, the barrier gets broken and he goes to like bring the barrier back up. But instead of doing that, he just kind of fumbles around until you kind of go in there and rescue him. And this dungeon's pretty fun because it's lighthearted. You get like the hang of stuff. So the monsters either drop gold, or they drop like, health up or like mana up stuff. There's no reason to grind. There's no levels. And then money doesn't really buy anything. So honestly, like avoiding combat is almost the best option 100% of the time. Like if you can get through without only fighting the bosses, like you're not going to be any weaker, right? Because they don't really drop. Sometimes they drop items. I think occasionally they would drop like an item. Or you want some gold so you can buy like an item. But the items are really just like potion, mana potion. I think there was some other stuff that I'd never used. So it's a pretty simple system. But you go through this, there's some puzzles to solve. The wizard guy's mad that you're like taking his job, and so he interferes with your ability to like get through the dungeon, and you just have to like deal with it. And then eventually you rescue him from like some caterpillar monster creatures, and then you fight the boss, and you're able to like save the village. And then everyone's happy, and he apologizes to everybody, and he's going to start using his magecraft for like good instead of silliness or whatever. And his wife does the old like frying pan upside the head, which would legitimately kill most human beings if they got hit in the head with a frying pan. It's so crazy. Like crack your skull open. Anyway, and you come back to this village later, and he's like had a firm change of heart and is much better. But for now, it's like a cute little, oh, okay, fun. Also in this village is a man who doesn't really, he's like, oh, he's Sauropotamus, and he's just quiet and doing his own thing, and he doesn't really want to talk to you. And that's relevant because in the next village we go to is like, it's like a seaside village. And you meet this girl who has a pet monster. And they're like super best friends forever and all this stuff. And if you remember the anime, there's a similar situation where they find a little friend and the car becomes very attached because she loves animals to this critter, but the critter ends up being like a bad guy, right? So this is very similar, only the little girl is Hikaru and she has this friend, and then she's like an orphan or something. I'm trying to remember exactly the order of events with this one. And so you need to go get the guy from the other village because he's like somehow related, like he's like a friend of the family or like an uncle or something, and be like, oh hey, your sister died, but this little girl is still around, so you should go help her. And he's like, I don't wanna. And then one of the girls is like, stop being an asshole, you son of a bitch. And he's like, yeah, I should, shouldn't I? So then he goes and hangs out with them, and then he teaches you how to swim, so you can go swim. And when you swim, you enter like the water dungeon, and the water dungeon takes you to Umi's Machina, which is the big dragon guy. And then, okay, it's like, cool. So you unlock the dragon, and then you come back, and then the creature is turned into like a monster, and it's like threatening to hurt, kill people, and destroy the town. So you have to beat it, and then the little girl like hates you and is so mad. But then like, you know, you leave the village and come back, and she's like, I forgive you. I understood you had to do what you had to do. But it's like a cute storyline, and you know, it's like good stuff. And then the dragon's like, he teaches you how to swim, and every time one of these, you learn like a new ability. So I mentioned before, Lafarga teaches you how to like smash ice. This guy teaches you how to swim, and then another NPC later on teaches you how to like dash. And they all help you. It's very like Metroidvania in that regard, as in now you can unlock more stuff, and you can go back to previous areas and unlock some like hidden stuff to get more of these like rainbow gems if you really want. And the rainbow gems, like I said, that you take them to like a rainbow trader, and the first thing is like just garbage. The picture oppressor doesn't really do anything. But after that, you get like cheat items essentially, like items that just make the game easier. Like you can move faster, or you can like charge into monsters and do damage instead of just like charging. So that's shit that just kind of like breaks the game somewhat. So if you really want to be like super overpowered, but again, I've never, even when I had this game as like a teenager, unlocked. I don't think I ever unlocked any of this stuff. Like, you need so many. Like, I think you need like 100 of each gem, and it's not like they just pop out of monsters. Like, you gotta hunt this shit down to get all the upgrades. So, good luck, I guess, if you're the one. I'm sure there's guides out there, but like, bro, I don't got the time for that shit. Anyway, so that wraps that up in this area, and then that leads us to the next village. So the next step on our journey here is the Ice Town. When we get to the Ice Town, we meet our friend Caldina. She's dancing around. All the boys are a big fan. And then we bump into Firo. That's his name. Firo, who is playing some music for all the ladies in town, and everyone's having a grand old time. I spent a lot of time in this ice village trying to figure out what to do next, because people kind of hint at like, I gotta bash through this thing to get to the cave, and I gotta do this and this. And I just could not figure it out. I wandered around, I left, I went to the rainbow place, I tried to go somewhere else. There's like an old man in the woods who comes up much, much later. Eventually, I was able to track myself down to Lafarga, who's just chilling in the middle of the map in a cabin. Initially, he's got like ice in front of him. I had to like do some stuff with Caldina and Pharaoh, and eventually he breaks out of the ice, and he takes us in, and he teaches us how to also break through ice when we charge. That's right, this game has a charge, like a running charge. And so that gets us into the ice cave. Moving around the ice cave, it's fine. There's a boss at the end. I literally don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It's really not that important. But it gets us ready to go to the next stage. So people keep hinting at a volcano, and the volcano is close to the ice level on the map, but it is like the last place we go. So next up, we head down to this town that is on fire. And it's on fire because Alcyone is a total see you next Tuesday. And she set it on fire, and there's like people trapped inside, so we go in there. This is the first time I had a real struggle with a boss, was in here. This fire boss, like if you touch him, a lot of times with bosses, if you touch him, you get hurt. But with this guy, he was like sending out flames, and like there's like a limited amount of space, and you gotta like work around these like pillars. I was not a fan, but it was pretty tough. Eventually, after 2 or 3 tries, I was able to finally defeat it. And once you defeat it, the fire goes down. Alcyone, she noped out, and she noped out. And then we were chilling. We just moved. Everyone's like, "Oh, thanks for putting out that fire that burned the whole village down. Adios." And we just head off to the next village. The next village is like a healing village, in that it's full of like spring water, and they got a big hospital. And we meet this guy who's kind of a douche nozzle who has a crush on like the local healer. She's like a nurse lady. And he also likes running around in circles with like the children, and he's got a super like run attack, or just like a super run he does. And so we try to get him to teach us, but he refuses. So then we go talk to the healing lady, or the girls do. And she's like, "Oh, the people are sick. There's some sort of disease. We need to figure it out, but we got to go to this place. And I don't know, something. And so you head over to this tree area, and you work your way all the way to the tree, but you can't enter the tree because you got to break it using Lafarga's like breaking powers. But you don't have enough room to like charge up your run. But you know, that guy back in the town, he has a way to do that. So you head back to town. He's still an asshole and refuses to help and runs off. But then one of the kids he like runs around with is like, "Oh, I can teach you. I don't mind. That guy's an asshole. Don't worry about it." So he does. So then we get it, and we have to trudge through this like swamp to get to the tree again. And we get to the top of the tree. And the top of the tree, I think that's where we find Alcyone and her like crew of assholes. There's a spider boss at some point. This might actually be where the spider boss is, if I remember correctly. Anyway, either way, it really wasn't that difficult. And you get the medicine. So we take the medicine back, and the guy who's trying to impress the girl, he's like, "Hey, what's up? I got the medicine and stuff," or something. And you're like, "Yep, here it is." And one of the girls, I can't remember who, is like, "Yep, here you go. Take the medicine. He helped us out. You did a good job. He's a good boy." And she's like, "Oh, that's so nice." And they like, they couple up or whatever. And then the girls like have a conversation afterwards, like, "Why do we do that?" And it's like, "Because we're nice." And he may be an asshole, but he's like not that much of an asshole. He's just kind of a silly boy asshole. And these like middle school girls are very mature in their understanding of human relationships. So that leads us to, and so then they're like, "Hey, there's this other place with like, there's like a monster town, or a town built by a monster or something." So then the girls head over there next to see what's going on, and they talk to everybody in the town, and the people are just like, "I don't know, there's like a thing that occurs sometimes, maybe." And then there's a boy who specifically is like, "Oh yeah, at night I hang out with my monster friend, but no one believes me." And you're like, "We believe you." And he's like, "That's awesome. So if you go out at night, you can get the monster to help you, the big turtle monster." And you're like, "Cool, let's do that." So you go out at night, and this little island in the middle of like the lake right by the town lifts up, and you can hop on it, and then you're able to kind of like go to these different paths, and you got to follow each separate path to unlock the giant turtle guy. And then you got to fight like a winged monster on its back. I think this is the winged monster. No, that's later. The winged monster is when you're in the Sky Palace thingy. Anyway, eventually you fight a boss, and then the monster, the like turtle monster thingy, is like so grateful that what does it do? I think it takes you up to like the Sky City. So the Sky City's next. And if you paid attention at all to the review of the anime I did, you can already tell like this is not what happens in the anime at all. First of all, and then whenever we get new abilities or new magics and stuff, we get a little like theater dance
So Priscia and Clef like do like, hey, we're here to teach you, and everything's voiced. It's fantastic. And they're like, oh, look at our little game. And occasionally Clef will like reach out just periodically on his, because he's not really stoned or anything. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? You doing good? High fives. Like this, the tone of this game is like 1,000 times lighter than the anime. So it makes me wonder if the manga is lighter as well. Anyway, so then they head up. Excuse me. They head up to the Sky Town, and once they get to the Sky Town, this is another area where I got kind of stuck. We eventually find Theo, whatever, and Fu's like, hey, boyfriend, and he's like not responding. And then there's like a masked, not even a mask, like a cloaked woman who's like, this is my boyfriend, leave him alone, stop bothering us. And I'm like, that's weird. And then Fu's kind of upset, but she's like, that's okay, I'm only 11 years old. You also find the Farga here, and the Farga looks odd. Like, he looks like he's being, oh no, yeah, he is it, at this point, Theo looks odd. Like, he has like a sunken, like a hollow look in his eyes, and there's something definitely amiss there. I'm trying to remember if the Farga has any issues in that regard. There's also, we gotta go and like investigate this guy's like home that's been all messed up and has like guards all over it. It's not a dungeon per se, but you like, I worked my way around this whole like maze, got to the end and there was nothing there, and I was like, the fuck? And then I left and realized there was like a door to the right, and I go in the door and that like precedes the story, and then I had to go back through again. But this time, if one of the guards that was like randomly wandering around like sees you, they kick you out and you gotta do it again. This part's pretty annoying. You get to the end, you find out that someone's been screwing around with his stuff and took like the key to get to like the Sky Palace, which is important because that's where Wyndham is. I think that's what it is. I can't remember the dragon's name, but it's Rayearth is the fire mechana, Wyndham is the air, and shoot, I don't remember what Umi's is. It's dragon. It's just something stupid. Anyway, so and so we hide out and we spy Alcyone, who's obviously the woman in the cloak who hypnotized Pharaoh. And Pharaoh is, he's the one who snuck in and got the key, and then they use the key to enter the Sky Palace. And so you follow him through. And the Sky Palace levels, you can fall a lot, and you take damage whenever you fall. You don't like die, which is nice. So it's really optimal just to use Fu and just charge up her bow and use that the whole time. Because again, it's pathfinding, if you will, it's homing, and it's long range. So you can just, like, while you're riding on stuff and things are like flying by, you can just take care of business pretty easily. We get to the end, and this is where on the clouds you fight like this kind of hawk monster, this zoo type character, if you will, ZU. You can look it up. He's like one of the great beasts, like Behemoth and Leviathan from like old Jewish literature. But it's kind of like flying monster like that. So once we take care of that business, Pharaoh like loses his like hypnotism. Lafarga was here doing stuff as well, and then we enter and we get Wyndham, and then now we got two of the Machina. We just got one left, which is the one of the volcano. I think, is it at this point? It's like around this point. Lafarga. We gotta fight Lafarga. And then when you beat him, he like falls to the earth. And you're like, oh no, he's dead. And so then we go and we find the guy in the cabin. The cabin guy. He's rescued Lafarga and he's doing alright. And it's like, oh, thank goodness. I don't know if we fight Lafarga here. And then we find out that Inoue guy who transforms into a beast, he's like somehow involved in this whole thing. And then Lafarga like sacrifices his life to help us defeat him, or help the girls defeat him. And then this time he like dies for realsies, and we bury him. And everyone's very sad, which is another very drastic change from the anime, because he doesn't die in the anime. In fact, he's in the sequel as well. So that's Lafarga. We also, I totally forgot. There's like a bridge level. We have to go underneath the bridge, and that's with what's his face, the monster summoning guy. I'm like forgetting stuff. Anyway, not important. So finally, we're headed off to the volcano level, and it's all fiery and fire and stuff. And at this point in the game, I was kind of like, I want to be done with this. I'm moving pretty quick. So you get through it. Maybe this is where you fight Lafarga, because that's where you fight him in the anime. Anyway, we get Rayearth, and once we have Rayearth and the rest of the guys, it's time to go fight Zagato. Heck yeah, let's do it. You don't have to go right away. You can like do some more stuff, search for rainbow crap and all that junkus. But we go fight Zagato in his castle. His castle level is very short. It's mostly like a boss battle with Zagato that has 2 parts. And then we get the big reveal. The Emirate summoned us, and dun dun dun. Oh no, now we gotta fight her. And we do some cool. There's like a very fun. I lost a couple times. It wasn't super fun, but there's a couple fun mech battles that you get where they're flying. It's almost like not a Gradius, but like one of these kind of like airplane games where you're flying and you're like shooting things and you can move back and forth and you gotta like dodge like a bullet hell kind of thing. But they're both pretty simple, nothing too crazy. And just like in the show, once Emirate gets defeated, that's the end. The girls transport back to Tokyo and they hug it out and they're like, oh, we'll stay best friends forever and we'll miss the world and everything will get better. And that wraps up the Saturn game. So again, it was good. I enjoyed it. It's like a easy, I don't know about easy, but it's very much like a Legend of Zelda kind of game. Like a Link to the Past kind of Legend of Zelda game. Plays very similarly. Less stuff, because obviously Link can get a bunch of random items and stuff. I mean, the girls will get different magic powers, but most of them are like different kind of attacks. And honestly, like the only one there's one attack each girl has that like hits everything on the screen, and that's like kind of what you're gonna use, or because it does the most damage as well. And then Fu has her healing magic, and then just the different weapon types. But other than that, I mean, they can jump, they can run a little bit. The charging doesn't do any real damage again. So yeah, so that's Imaginary Rayearth for the Sega Saturn.
All right, so moving on to the Super Nintendo game. Man, I should have done this a long time ago. I had to go back and like speed watch my own playthrough of this because I totally forgot everything about it. So, the Super Nintendo version is a Japanese role-playing game in the style of Breath of Fire, I would say most closely. In that's if you think about Breath of Fire, it's got that kind of same diagonal looking playing field when you're in battle. And then you have the 3 characters, and they have their attacks and their magics and such. It's not that close related to Breath of Fire, to be completely honest. But you have the 3 girls, and then as the game proceeds, you get other people to come kind of join you. You get Furio, which is the princess brother with gray hair, who has a romantic relationship with Fu. You get, what is his name? Ascot. You get Ascot, the little summoning guy. You get Caldina, the dancing girl. And you get, I don't think you ever get Lafarga. I think you just get those 3. Let me think. No, I think you do get Lafarga at some point, if I remember correctly. So Lafarga joins you. But the gist of the story follows along the lines of, I don't know, the very vaguest of kind of the game / anime. So the overarching story remains the same, right? It's the girls, they get summoned to the world by Emirate. They speak to Sefu. That's not his name. They're in Sephiroth. What the fuck is the wizard's name? Anyway, whatever his name is. And then they have to go meet with Precia. Precia says they got to go get the magic stone so she can make the magic weapons and armor. They get their temporary weapons and armor. They go to the forest where they can't use magic. They meet Furio. They fight Alcyone like 500 times. Then Ascot shows up at some point. Caldina shows up at some point. You fight, and then these people join you, is kind of the big key difference in the stories. Because they don't join you in the other game or in the anime. But in this one, like, you meet with Furio because you fight like a plant monster, and then he's like, I'm going to team up with you guys. Then he joins as a member of the team, and you fight through, and then you get to Alcyone, and you beat her, and then you get your medals. And when they get their materials for their magic weapons, they have to go through like their dream thing where like Umi has to fight her parents, Hikaru has to fight her dog, and Fu has to fight herself. And similarly to the Sega Saturn game,
you just like fight, and then with Fu, you gotta like heal versus fight, and eventually you beat with like the power of love for yourself and overcoming yourself or something. Anyway, the story is very minimalistic in the Super Nintendo version. Like the story in the Saturn game is like just as good, if not better, than the anime. It's like a lot of stuff. There's cutscenes. There's everybody's got character and stuff. The Super Nintendo version, their characters have their character and they feel like the characters that they are. But the story it's very rushed. Like the game was pretty short. Like I think I got through the whole thing. And granted, I'm using like speed, like for combat and stuff for the most part, right? I'm not just like letting it slowly play out the combat, the fucking old school Japanese role playing game, turn-based combat, which I like. But I like it when I can speed it up 5,000 times. So anytime I'm doing anything in combat, it's like super fast. But I think the game maybe took like 5-6 hours max. So maybe like 10 hours if you didn't speed all the combats. I don't know if it even took me that long. It might have been like 3 or 4. I remember it being very quick. And then the video I have left, because I've been putting this thing off for so long, is like cut up edited video. So it doesn't give me a good estimate. I think I have like maybe an hour of video, but I cut out a lot of like me just fighting battles and wandering around. I didn't really feel like you needed to grind much. I don't remember grinding much, but again, I'm playing. There were times when I was just like run back and forth and hold like the speed button down just to like kill stuff. But when you first start, you have nothing, and you can go fight and you can just like punch things. So I went and like punched mushrooms and got to level like 5, which I feel like was completely unnecessary later on, before you get to Pressia and actually get your weapons and armor and can fight. But it gave me, it put me off at like a very good start because I was just crushing things. Clef, that's his name, the wizard's Clef. All right, yeah. So then it's got that very like Super Nintendo thing, like the Mario Brother thing, where it's like, here's the ice level, here's the fire level, here's the desert level, here's the forest level, and there's not that many levels. There's an underwater level. And then you get to the castle, Zagato's castle, and you go and you fight him, and then you fight Emeraude in her like form. You never fight in the mechs, but once you unlock all the mechs, which you do pretty quick, right? So you get your weapons and armor, then you like immediately go and get Umis from like the Ice Palace, and you go get Fus from like the Wind Palace, and then you go to like the volcano to get Hikaru's. Like there's no bullshitting around. Like you're just like, go get that, go get that, go get that, and they level up. Right, as they get more of the machina kind of resurrected, they're able to like level themselves up as they go. And then you can like your spells, which become the only spells you want to use, are the ones that essentially summon the mechs. They don't summon them; they're just spells. But when you cast them, the mechs show up and they do like their super attack, and it does a lot of fucking damage. And then you go. Oh, speaking of the combat, so Fu is not strong, but her magic is the strongest, and she has healing. Umi's like a mix, and then Hikaru is also a mix. But she seems like her attacks do more damage, but her spells also do just slightly less damage than Umi. And they have stats, and they, you see is like Umi's kind of the middle ground, but Hikaru's hands down the best character. And so there's a couple times where like you're just fighting stuff with Hikaru, and you're like, this is easy. And then there's one point where you fight without Hikaru, and you're like, holy shit, this got a lot harder real fast. And that, again, you don't buy items. I mean, you can buy, like, healing potions and shit. Can you? I don't remember. It might be, like, no buying of anything. Anyway, there's towns you go to, and the towns you just kind of bullshit with people, and they kind of point you in a general direction. There's an overworld. The overworld is very generic. Like, if you were just, like, go into RPG Maker and be like, RPG Maker, make me an overworld, and make it very bland, with just, like, some forests and mountains here and there, and some rivers and bridges, but, like, everything's green. There's no... you don't go to like the ice, you don't go to the north to do like the ice level. You just go into like the ice cavern where the dragon's at, or the water cavern, and then it just happens to be ice or water or whatever. Yeah, and then you get to the end, and then you fight, and then you win, and then, oh, we did it. Da 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 da. I remember being very unimpressed playing through this. It was fun. Again, it's one of those things where it's like I played through it, and it's fine. It is Magic Knight Rayearth as a Japanese role-playing game. And that is what it is. But again, it's almost like a fan-made game. I don't mean that. There's some fan-made games that are fantastic, but it's very amateurish. It feels like there's not a lot to it. It's just like very by the book. Like someone was given an assignment. Hey, between all that, between like doing what you actually want to do, can you like take this franchise and just make a JRPG out of it? Like, and they're like, what's that? And you're like, like Final Fantasy 1. And yeah, I guess I could. That doesn't seem too hard. And they do it, and like it looks nice, like Super Nintendo's. But it almost looks like that. It's low end for Super Nintendo, like Final Fantasy 2 or 4. Final Fantasy 4 looks 1,000 times better than this. Breath of Fire looks better than this. Most like when you think of like Super Nintendo JRPGs, most of them are going to be better, are going to look better and play better than this. And this came out in like 95, so it's really not that early in the cycle. But I almost feel like this could have just been on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it would have been fine. They have another game called like Oasis or something, the company who made this. So I'm curious about that, because again, it's like there's nothing wrong with the game. As in, it's a JRPG, right? Like it accomplished, mission accomplished. You made a JRPG with Magic Knight Rayearth like on top of it. And I played through it, and I'm like, yeah, that's a game. And I finished it, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. Would I recommend playing it? No. If you really want to play a JRPG version of Magic Knight Rayearth, like, it's fine. I would not say do not play it. But if you just want to play a JRPG, I would not put this on like your list of things that you got to play this game. It's just like it exists. It's fine. The story, again, it's like it's not that it cuts out stuff. It's that it's very hurried, and it doesn't explain a lot. And again, that could be the translation because it's a fan translation, right? They could have just like slapped together like what you needed to know to get through the day. But again, it's like it moves very quick. So yeah, there's not much else to say about it. It follows the storyline, and you get it, and it's a JRPG, and it's fine. Nothing to write home about. And yeah, so moving on next. Moving on, we now have there's still 2 Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, the way I played them, and Game Gear games. So we're gonna start with the Game Boy games. So the first Game Boy game, both of them are kind of simplistic. They seem to have been made by the same company, or at least they use the same models for the most part, like the little old Game Boy models for the characters. The first one is kind of like I mean, they're both kind of role-playing games. In the first one, the girls, it takes place during like the first season-ish of Magic Knight Rayearth. It's right after the girls get, like they do the thing with Pressia. I don't think they've met Ferio yet. And they're just wandering through the woods, and then Makono, the little monster friend, is like bouncing around, and he goes up to like this tree, and the tree there's like a painting, and the girl's like, look at this crazy painting, and then they like woo 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 get absorbed into this world and split up, and then you get to choose who you want to start with. So I started with Fu, and so each one has like a level they go through, and it's not like one level, it's like levels, or like there's various like kind of dungeons or whatever. So the trying to separate because again they're very similar. So in the first one, okay, so so with Fu, she's in a tower. She's at the top of the tower, and she's got to work her way down. And when she gets to the bottom of the tower, there's a Minotaur, which might be a Shin Megami Tensei throwback, or it might just be a reference to the Labyrinth, like the Greek story about Perseus. I'm not sure. And the Labyrinth with the Minotaur at the end, I don't know. But you're a side scrolled, so it'll show the character. So it shows Fu on the right side, left, right, yeah. And on the left side's the monster, and then you can do like attack and then various spells, and then you level up. So if you grind a little at the top, you pretty much just cruise through it. I don't remember there being any puzzles. You kind of just like work your way down the tower through the levels, and as you get lower and lower, the monsters get slightly more stronger. Like you essentially just get different monsters. There's some like kind of like little very minimal puzzly sections. So you get through that. Excuse me. And you fight the Minotaur, and that's the end of her level. And then she ends up at this like main room, and then it goes back to the choosing screen, and you get to choose whoever's left, right? So the next I chose Hikaru, I think. So Hikaru's got a little bit more stuff going on. She pops into like this town with like these winged creatures. And again, it's like one of those things where it's like, I feel like there was a lot of like asset usage, reflip. And especially when you compare this to like the other Game Boy game where it's like, there was also like winged creatures in that for some reason. And the tiles and the dungeons and stuff. The combat's totally different, but anyway. So then Hikaru, so instead of going like down a tower, up a tower, she there's the village, and then she's like, cool, I'm gonna go figure this out. And then you go out to like an overworld, and there's 3 areas. There's like cave, castle, and mountain, I think. And you get through each one, and essentially you're just trying to figure out why you're trying to like stop like the replanoids. Like you're trying to stop like these kind of lizardy type people from attacking the winged people and like help them. So you help them and you restore their water supply or something, and then it's like, oh great, and you're like, oh I'm glad I helped you guys. I wish I could figure out what to do to get back to my friends. And they're like, well, you can just jump down this well that's like a portal to like a different world. And you're like, oh, that's cool, I'll do that. So then she does that, and then she pops up in the kind of main area world, or like the same place that Fu showed up. And lastly is Umi. Umi, what is Umi's situation? Oh, I remember Umi. Okay, so then Umi pops into a forest, and she's like, where'd everyone go? And then there's like a rabbit creature that kind of taunts you, and you go back, Umi's doing Umi stuff like she does with Makono, so this rabbit just essentially takes Makono's spot with like the humor. Oh, nope, I want to go this way, I'm going to work. Kind of like the silly slapsticky humor. And so you go through the forest and you find out that old man tree is having troubles, and then there's monsters invading him. And then after you get through the forest, the tree's like, oh, please help go inside and defeat like whatever demon is inside causing me ill will. So you do that. And then there's like the forest level, and then there's like inside the tree level. And then you get to the end, and there's a boss of some sort. I don't remember exactly. I just remember the Minotaur because it stuck out to me with Fu. And once you do that, you get to the final area, and then all 3 girls like meet up, and they're like, yeah, we did it. That's weird painting. I don't know what's going on. Something. These people need like a lot of help. And someone like took this painting world, like the world of Rayearth, and jacked it up. Who could have done that? And then it's like Zelkato shows up, and you're like, Zelkato! And it's not actually Zelkato. It's like the spirit of Zelkato, or like a fraction of him, or like a... What's that thing in Harry Potter? Like a Horcrux? Horcrux? Whatever. And so then the girls got to take turns fighting Zelgato. So each one gets... Because they don't fight together, right? Because again, it shows... There's like a sprite of the girl and then the enemy. And then because I played the Game Boy on the Game Boy Color emulator, each girl has like Umi's... Everything's kind of bluish. Because the Game Boy Color, I think, has like 4 colors versus the 2 the Game Boy had. So it'll be like shades of blue, Hikaru's shades of red, and Fu's shades of green. So it's like a little bit better. Yeah, and then once all the girls defeat Zelgato, they're like, "Yay, we did it!" And then the painting, and he's like, "Before I leave, I'm going to set this place on fire." Rrr. And they're like, "No, what about all our friends that were here? They're all died." And they're like, "Well, we just have to go. There's something we can do to help them." And so then they all leave, and they're kind of sad, eponymous about it. And then they like, "Let's go get Zelgato and get our revenge," or something. And so they all go to that. They all head off. But then the painting, I can't remember, they might have stopped the painting from like burning up. All the people that were in the painting, they like pop out of the painting. And now they're like, oh, where are we? Oh, we're in this other world that the girls showed us. And like, we should all start our own little community and be happy and friends. And they're like, yay. And they're like, yay, we did it. We're so happy. And then the game ends. And little do they realize that the entire world of Sephiroth is going to almost be destroyed. And probably a lot of them are going to die. But, so that was a fun little romp. I enjoyed it. It was pretty like smooth and breezy, and like, you know, it took maybe a couple hours to like knock out. And the characters were, the translation, the fan translation was done well, so no complaints. It was pretty good. So the second Game Boy game I had a lot more issues with. It's still like an RPG, but this time you're with all 3 girls. So they're doing something. They like it's almost like a middle ground from like the Imaginate Rayearth 1 season 1 and then season 2, because they talk about how they've already like saved Sephiroth, but then they come back and it's like lost all its color. And they're very sad about that. And this is like very distinctly like a Game Boy Advance game. Or not Game Boy Advance, a Game Boy Color game. Because the whole thing's like, the game's even called like Magic Knight Rayearth, like color drop distance 382/500 or whatever. It's got the colors in the name, so it's like that's the whole point. Is like, look, now we got Game Boy Color, and so the game uses the color. It doesn't just like whitewash everything or green wash, blue wash, red wash. It's got a little bit more like nuance to it. But so all 3 girls, they like get summoned back to Sephiroth, and they're like, oh no, all the color is gone, and then they get summoned to like their Machina, and they're standing around being like, girls, we summoned you here because someone stole all the colors and you need to help get the colors back so Saphiro can be okay. And they're like, we're going to do it. And so then they send you off to this like world. So first you go to like a town, and the town is got the angel people in it I mentioned before, but they're not related to the angel people from the previous Game Boy game at all. Or maybe they're supposed to be, but the translation didn't cover that. But it seemed there's like no relation mentioned. And Hikaru's like, hey, it's my friends. It's just like, dude, yep, here you go. Here's angel people. And so a couple of them like wandered off, and they're like, oh no, we got to go help our friends. They're in like this cave or something. And so the girls go out, and then there's 3 dungeons. You get 3 colors back, and you bring the colors back to this area, and then you like solve the color crisis and restore color to Sephiroth, and then you get sent back to Tokyo. That's the grand plot. So the mini plot is these people get it seems like they got kidnapped, or they ran off to figure out the color situation after all their color got stolen. And then you go and you run into like the rabbit who helped Umi from the previous game, but it's not the same rabbit because Umi doesn't recognize him, right? But it's the same model and everything. So it's just a lot of reused assets, which is fine. You get into battle in this. It's the 3 versus the monsters. It's not like sprite, like Final Fantasy style side-scrolling. It's more like facing forward. The battles aren't as fun in this, I want to say. I'm playing on like an emulator, and I'm like not going to sit there and fucking watch like a 1990s Game Boy game slowly take turns, right? So I'm jamming that turbo button anytime I was in combat. So it wasn't that oppressive, but it still happened a lot. And then to make matters worse, this is a puzzle-heavy, focused game. And when I say that, there was a couple times, like I think there was 2 puzzles that I could not figure out. Like I had to delve into like old forums on like GameFAQs, I think, to like find somebody who like made an offhanded comment about how to solve one of these puzzles. Because you would get clues, and granted, the fan translators did a great job of explaining 90% of these. But one of them, I don't know, I felt like it was one of those things where if, as a translator, the one thing I would have, or an editor, I'd have been like, this needs to be a little more obvious. Like, I don't care what the direct translation says. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, the clue that is given is not like giving you the answer that you need to put in here. Because it had something to do with like, it was something dumb, or it's like an L but upside down, and so you made an L upside down, and then you made like a 7, and then I was like doing all sorts of different things. It wasn't that exactly, but it was something like that where I was like, oh, too easy, and then I did it and like, well, that didn't work, because it's block moving puzzles, like all block moving puzzles, and some of them get super crazy. There's one where like everything's invisible in the room, but there's walls and there's things you got to move and like switches, and that one actually was able to get through. I like kind of hard push that. And get through it, but yeah, the puzzles were like, it got crushing at some point because there's a lot. Like each one of these dungeons, I want to say, is at least like 10 floors, and every floor has a puzzle, and it really just starts out, and it slow rolls you into it. So by the time you get to the third, so you go to like the cave, and you get through the cave. Excuse me. And at the end's the rabbit. Excuse me. And at the end's the rabbit, and he's like stole the paint, and he's got a paint stealing machine. So then you have a boss fight, and then you get like yellow back or something, and then you follow him to like a tower or something, and in the tower it's the same thing. You do like the awful puzzles that drive you insane, and you get to the end, and there's another boss fight, but this time there's a clown with the rabbit, and the clown's like the true mastermind. The rabbit's just like his lackey, and he's like, you beat the clown, and then he leaves the rabbit behind. The rabbit's sad that he's like got fooled by the clown, and he wants to help out now. So you're like, you can help out, friend, and so he joins you, and I think he does fight. So now you have 4 people in your party, which is fun, and you get like turquoise. I remember being like, what? Like, that's not a primary color. And then you go to the castle which is the last level, and it's the same dealio. You like, and the puzzles at the castle, that's where it would really like, you're just like scratching your head, like the fuck does this want me to do? And where the invisible one, it got like really intense. And then you get to the end and you fight the clown and defeat him, and then the rabbit, and then you get like cyan. Like, It just kept getting like weirder. It was like yellow, purple, and then like something like chartreuse, and you're like, the fuck? It was like a mixture. It was like a primary color, two primary colors mixed together, a primary color, and a secondary color mixed together, like a tertiary color. And you're like, okay, all right. But it didn't even make any sense, right? It wasn't like yellow and then purple, which is all the primary colors, and then I don't know, magenta. I don't like indigo. It was like, and then like chartreuse, and it's like that's just yellow again. It was like yellow, green, and chartreuse. It's like that's the same color. Like, anyway, it was something ridiculous. So you take all the paint back and you restore the color, and the rabbit's like, "Yay, thanks so much!" And he goes and like lives with the machina, and I seem to remember like there being Precia or some other chick just like around during this whole chicanery. But then you get to see like a beautiful restored Game Boy version of Saphiro, and then like a cute little like cutscene thingy, and then that's the end of that. So I hated it. Mostly the puzzles were like, I was getting like headaches, and like some of them were just like didn't make sense, and you were just trial and error. So the puzzle thing wasn't great. The combat was boring, and there was it was like long stretches. So the story was kind of there, but not really. So this is definitely the worst. And spoiler, it continues to be the worst out of all the Magic Knight Rayearth games. Like the Super Nintendo one is not good, but it's like you can play through it, get the story, and it's like combat's fine and everything else is like fine. This was like irritating most of the time. And the other Game Boy game was like not delightful, but it was like, oh, this is fine. That was like a fun romp of time to just like kill some time and do this thing. So definitely this is the worst. But yeah. Next up are the Game Gear games. These are the most interesting out of the whole bunch. So the first one is very colorful, very pretty. It's all three girls. They start off in like the forest of No Magic, where they're working on getting stuff. They're little like thingy-mabobbers. Makono's there. You have like your tent, which is like, this didn't show up in the Super Nintendo version or the Saturn version, I don't think. But it's like their little pop-up tent home, like from Dungeons & Dragons, right? So you can go back there and rest and save. And it's very much kind of like Shining in the Dark, in that when you go into like a house or talk to somebody, it shows you like that screen from like Shining in the Dark or the Shining Force games. And then your character, your sprite's super big. Like whoever you choose, it doesn't really... Oh, it matters later because sometimes there's like puzzles where you gotta have a certain character in the front for their magic. So you can switch. But the like Hikaru or whatever is like 1/3 of the screen, right? And then the rest of the screen is like this, and then you have like a path that you have to follow, right? So you can go like left, right, and then every now and then there'll be like an up or a down. And so you wander through the forest, and I got murked like immediately. So I was like, all right, I got to grind this out a little bit because it is a role-playing game. The combat is bizarre. It's not bad per se. It's a roulette, not a roulette wheel. It's a slot machine, right? So there's like a slot, so that you start battle, and then the monster's up top, and then the pictures of the girls at the bottom, and then they have like a slot machine thing rolling, and then they have like a little, like their active time bar, battle bar is like their health is like a square around them, and then as it's spinning, I'm trying to remember exactly how this goes. As it's spinning, you click like the button to have them, and it will stop the spin. Whatever they get on the spin is like the attack they do, and then you can like time it so all girls go at the same time, and it does like a little bit more damage from what I remember. Or you can just have them, yeah. So you can do them all, or you can just do one. But if you do them all, they'll do like, I think it does do more damage, or it does like a special attack or something. Anyway, it took a minute to get like used to this whole thing, but once it gets going, it's like the game's designed for this, so it really wasn't that complicated, and you can kind of just cruise through the battles. So then you got to go and you got to find like a shovel from some guy in the woods, and then you got to use that shovel to like dig past a fallen tree or something. And then you end up in like a sea town. But the girls are trying to find the machina. They're not even trying to find the machina. They're trying to find, what the fuck were they trying to find? Shoot. They're trying to find something so that they can go fight Zagato. And so the game, the first few levels, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like there's a lot of combat, a lot of like the forest level is like pretty. It's not super long, but it's decently long. Then you go to like a town, and that's pretty long. And then there's Ferio, and he stole like whatever thing you're trying to like the orb that you're gonna use to like open up the Shrine of Chaos or stole your like Crystal of Light or whatever. It's some bullshit like that. Like I was like, what? What is this story? And then Ferio's the bad guy. He keeps stealing from you, so you have to keep kicking his ass. And you're in like a town wandering around, and eventually you get like on a boat. I think there was something. There's like another part I missed that I'm trying to think of. Anyway, at some point it's like we need to go, and then you go. It opens up like a world map. So there's like 3 levels. I can't remember what the 3rd level is. There's like forest, town, and then like another forest or a dungeon, like a cave. I don't remember it being a cave though. It's like all above ground. And then there's like little cutscenes that are just like little comic cutscenes. The best part is, so you get to that point, right? And then it's like, we got to go check out the underground temple to find one of these things. And you're like, let's do it. And then you get like a little cutscene, like, you know, it's like, here's a picture in words, here's a picture in words, here's a picture in words, here's a picture in words. And then it's like, we found it. Let's leave. Picture in words, picture in words. Like, there's no gameplay for this part. And I was like, that's bizarre. And then you go to like a volcano, and then the volcano's a level, but it's very short. And you find the MacGuffin like real quick, or whatever it is. And then it's like, all right, let's go to Zelgado's castle. And you go to Zelgado's castle, and that level is also really short. And then you fight Zelgado, and when you beat him, it's like, we did it, we saved Saphiro. And that's the end of the game. And I was like, oh, okay. It was quick, and it started off being like, it seemed like this, and it started off, and then it almost seemed like they ran out of like time, patience, or care, and we're just like, fuck this, let's just finish this game and be done with it. And that's like how it felt on the second half, like, or the second, I want to say second, like, 8th. Because like 7/8 of the game is like the first 3 levels, and then it's just like, and the game's over. And I was like, oh, that was abrupt. But it was kind of fun. It was quirky and different, and it's interesting to see all the different ways they interpreted like these 3 girls with magical powers in like an isekai world. And I enjoyed it for that, and I enjoyed the visuals, and the combat was kind of funny. So all in all, it was a pretty good experience. I'm not gonna lie. Like, again, I died like immediately, like twice, and then I was like, all right, I need to like grind out in this first area and then go back and heal like immediately. But once you get that kind of initial level grind out of the way, it's like the game just kind of like flows, and there was no more problems. I don't know if you even fight any bosses. No, you definitely fight bosses. Anyway, so it was pretty good, things considered. Like, so yeah, there you go. That's the first Game Gear game. All right, lastly here, we have the second Game Gear game. There's actually not much to talk about this. It's like a 3-way Princess Maker game. Are they called Princess Makers? No. What are they called? I don't remember. It's just like manager, if I'm pretty sure it's Princess Maker. If you look up like Princess Maker, there are these games where you have like a daughter or a ward or whatever, and you're like in charge of making sure she can like grow up to be the kind of person that can like lead the kingdom and save them from like the enemy or some bullshit. And so then you have like this girl, and it's like you have like a schedule, and you're like, and a lot of eroge games or erotica crib off the Princess Maker thing. But the original Princess Maker series, which is a whole freaking series in Japan, I think 1 or 2 of them came out here, which is how I know about it, were very like pure and innocent. It was like, what do you want her to do? Oh, she's going to do fencing. She's going to learn to do tea parties. She's going to go for a walk. She's going to, because she's supposed to be like a little girl. And after like so much time goes by, the game like checks all the stats and all the stuff she did, and you get like an ending. So it's like if you spend all your time fencing and like playing outside, and you build that stats, then it's like she becomes like a warrior queen. If you spend all your time being like tea parties and diplomacy, then she becomes like a diplomatic queen. Stuff like that, right? And that's what this game is. But it's with all 3 girls. So you have to balance all the 3 different girls. And the big things are like, there's like dance contests periodically, and then there's like combat periodically. And what I discovered was the best thing to do was to just choose a girl, who I choose Umi, of course, because she's the best, and just did everything with her, maxed out everything with her. And then the other girls would like get brought along occasionally. Now this game has this function. So this, like I said, it's I had to pause to go to the game. So picking up my mind. Oh, so you can send the girl on adventures to get like treasure and to get items and to build stats, which was super cool. I don't know how far it went because I got through like the first level, which is like plains and town, and then I got to like the forest, and then every time I tried to run through the forest, the game would crash. And I really enjoyed that part because there's a lot of choices and a lot of like decisions, and you like talk to various people. This game is a fan translation that never came out here, but I really enjoyed it. I like these kind of like managerial games, erotica or not. Just because it's like there's a lot of like strategy to it and like thinking about the different possibilities and like balancing time and all this stuff. It's kind of like the Persona games when it comes to like finding your waifu or like what do they call them in that game? The golly, you know what I'm talking about? The social links. It's kind of like social links, only it's like way more advanced of a system. And this has a lot of stuff. And then it was cool to do the dance stuff. And there's choices about what dress you want to wear and the type of combat and all this shit. And all that stuff was like very important to like everything that was going on. And it was all super fun and super cool to do. And then I got the game again never came out here, so it's got a fan translation. And the fan translation is not 100%, which is cool because it's fine. I mean, they did the best they could. And you have enough to get through the game and like understand what's going on. But there were whole portions of the game that were just like in Japanese. And I was like, I don't really know what's going on. Because the Japanese is very poor and I didn't feel like sitting there with the translator. What I should have done is just pulled up my phone, which I kind of did at the end, and just like Google translated this stuff just so I could get like a vague idea of what was going on. I sort of did that with the endings because the endings were 100% in Japanese. And so it looked like Umi became like a warrior queen and like saved the day. And then Hikaru went and became like a farm lady and worked on a farm. And then Fu got into like falconry or something. And I was like, okay, cool. But there's a lot of different stats. There's like dance stat, combat stat, grace or something. I don't remember. There's like 8 things that you can like level up. I think I maxed almost everything for Umi, but the rest of the girls I was just kind of like middling. But you have like 50 days. And again, like I said, there's like combat tournaments and there's these adventures you can go on and there's all this stuff. And it was really enjoyable. Like it's one of those things like out of all these games, it's the only one I'm like, I'd go back and play that to try to see if I get a different ending. Again, the game's super janky. And the translation's not all there and it crashed. Not often, but it crashed. But you know, it's one of those things where it's like if you just hold down like the turbo button, you can get through this thing pretty quick. And so it'd be interesting to see like if I just try something completely different. And my understanding from like the Google translation on my phone while I was like staring at the screen was that I didn't get the best ending. The best ending is like all the girls become Magic Knights and then save the day. But the only one I got to be a Magic Knight was Umi. So I'd be curious to see what that would be like. But yeah, so that's all the games that they made for Magic Knight Rayearth. They were all varying levels of good. Even the Game Boy game I did not like was not poorly made. It like did what it did, and the puzzles weren't so atrocious. I just did not enjoy it, and I would never go back and play that again. And if you asked me, I'd be like, you can avoid it. There's no reason to play this, but it's like fine, right? But everything else I enjoyed. Yeah, the Super Nintendo game I would say is also kind of like, I wasn't a big fan of that, but it wasn't bad. Again, it was like it's more in that fine category with the one Game Boy game. But the Saturn game was fun, a lot of lightheartedness, a lot of fun stuff going on. The first Game Boy game was pretty breezy and fun, and the 2 Game Gear games were very fun because they were just such a unique take on like a Japanese role-playing game, and then like this managerial thing, which I enjoy. So the whole thing was like the whole experience was very enjoyable. I'm glad I was able to watch through the anime again and then do this, and I would definitely recommend anyone who's into isekai or just like lighthearted fun or just like old school anime to try any of this and all this stuff. It's all pretty good. The second season, you could just not watch. It's fine. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to mention is the second Game Gear game is the only game that takes in like that second season because it takes place during the second season. So all those characters show up as like rivals or love interests or whatever. And like Ascot is like older and stuff like that. So that was interesting. Because he has like a crush on Umi, just like in the show, which is adorbs. But yeah, so thoroughly enjoyed it, and there you go. Cool. Catch y'all later.